Mom called me ungrateful and dead weight when I didn't lend her money. I just smiled and said, "Cool, then don't call me ever again." 2 weeks later, she showed up crying. It started like it always did, with a phone call, and that voice I've known my whole life, already wound up before I even answered. I was sitting at the edge of my bed, exhausted after another double shift. My eyes burned, my back ached, and all I wanted was quiet. Just 5 minutes of silence where no one needed anything from me. But my phone lit up, Mom. I should have let it go to voicemail. But I didn't. Because that's what years of guilt and conditioning do to you. They make you pick up, even when everything inside you begs you not to. "Hi, Mom," I said, already bracing. She skipped the pleasantries. "How much money do you have in your savings?" "I need $3,000 by Friday." Not even a hello? Just like that. No explanation, no soft lead-in. Like I was a vending machine, and she just had to push the right buttons. That was the moment. The moment everything shifted. It sounds small, right? A phone call. A request. But when you spent 33 years playing the role of the dutiful son, of the fallback plan, the safety net, the punching bag, it's not small. It's the final straw. Because this wasn't new. This was the pattern. Since I was a kid, she'd called me ungrateful if I didn't smile when she dropped food on the table. Told me I was the reason her boyfriends left. "If you weren't so moody all the time, maybe James would have stayed." I was 11. James was a drunk. But I still believed her. I always did. Every birthday, every school play she missed, every time she blamed me for her bouncing checks or her inability to keep a job, I swallowed it. I told myself it was my fault. I just wasn't good enough. So I worked harder. I worked myself into the ground, 2 jobs, barely any social life, just trying to make rent, pay my loans, and help her stay afloat. Every time she called crying about an emergency, I sent what I could. My 20s disappeared into wiring money and fixing her messes. And she never once said thank you. Not really. Now here she was, calling again, like it was nothing. "I'm not giving you $3,000, Mom," I said quietly. Calm. Tired. Silence on her end. "What?" she snapped. "What do you mean you're not giving it to me?" "I mean no," I said, firmer this time. "I've helped you too many times. I can't do it anymore." What followed was a rage I hadn't heard in years, but it wasn't surprising. It was like she had the words already prepared. She launched into it without hesitation. "You ungrateful little parasite," she hissed. "All I've ever done is raise you, and this is how you repay me? I should have never kept you. You're just dead weight." There it was. That phrase again. Ungrateful. Dead weight. As if I hadn't spent my whole life trying to prove otherwise. But this time, something inside me didn't crumble. It didn't flinch. It got very, very still. I took a breath and said the simplest, truest thing I'd ever said to her. "Cool. Then don't call me ever again." And I hung up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just ended it. The silence that followed wasn't just on the phone. It was in my chest, too. Like a storm finally passing. Like the moment after an earthquake when everything is still, and you realize the world didn't fall apart. I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, buzzing with another call I didn't answer. 2 weeks passed. No texts. No calls. No guilt trips. Until the knock came at my door. She was standing there. No makeup. Eyes red. Shoulders hunched. The woman who once screamed that I was a burden now looked like the one who'd been carrying the weight. I opened the door, and for the first time in my life, she looked small. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice shaking. I stepped aside without a word, already knowing this wasn't going to be a reunion. This was going to be reckoning. She stood there in the middle of my living room like a stranger. Like she was trying to remember what kind of power she used to have here, and realizing it was gone. I didn't offer her a seat. She sat anyway, on the edge of the couch like she thought she might fall off. Her hands twisted together in her lap, fidgeting the way she always did when things were slipping out of her control. That used to scare me as a kid. I'd start talking fast, apologizing for things I didn't do, just to stop the storm before it started. But not now. Now I just watched her. She looked around, taking it all in, the apartment I'd put together with my own hands. Sparse, but clean. Quiet. Mine. I've been trying to call, she said softly. I said nothing. She sighed, like she was the one exhausted. Look. I was upset. I didn't mean what I said. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Which part? The ungrateful part? Or the dead weight? Her eyes flicked to mine, just for a second, then dropped. You know, I was just overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do. Funny, I said. That's exactly how I used to feel when you'd scream at me for not getting straight A's. Or when your boyfriend of the month would leave and you'd lock yourself in your room crying for days and I had to figure out how to cook dinner. Or when the power got shut off and I was the one calling the electric company. She blinked like she'd been slapped. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. I've always helped you, I said. Always. Even when I didn't have enough for myself. Even when I was one missed paycheck from being on the street. You didn't ask how I was. You never asked if I was okay. You just took. And the second I said no, one single time, you turned on me like I was the enemy. That's not fair. She started. No. I cut in. It is. And you know it. She looked away, her jaw tightening. I was a single mom. You don't know how hard that was. I nodded slowly. No, I don't. But I know how hard it was being your kid. I know what it felt like to be compared to everyone else's perfect children, to be told I wasn't doing enough when I was 12 and mopping floors and handing you my birthday money so you could buy groceries. Her breath caught. She tried to say something, but I kept going. You called me selfish. You called me a burden. But who showed up every time you needed help? Who paid your rent last year when your card got declined? Who took a side job delivering food at night just to make sure you didn't get evicted? I was shaking now, but not from rage. From release. Me. Tears started to run down her face. But I didn't reach for her. I didn't fold the way I used to. I let her cry. You broke something in me, Mom. A long time ago. And I kept trying to fix it. I kept hoping that if I gave enough, if I worked hard enough, maybe you'd see me. Maybe you'd say you were proud. Her sobs grew louder. But I didn't stop. You never did. Silence fell between us like snowfall. Heavy. Quiet. Final. And then I said what I never thought I'd say. There's nothing left to salvage. She looked up, mascara running, eyes red. Don't say that. But I meant it. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I'm done. I'm done being the fix-it kid. I'm done begging for love that should have been given freely. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Like she couldn't find the words that used to work so well on me. I stepped toward the door. I think you should go. She stood slowly, wobbling like her legs barely worked. I opened the door and held it. She stepped out into the hallway, turning one last time with a look I hadn't seen before, not rage, not guilt. Loss. And I finally understood what people meant when they said peace isn't loud. It's not revenge or some big dramatic exit. It's the quiet that comes after you take your power back. I shut the door behind her and leaned against it. For the first time in 33 years I was free. The silence after she left was thick. Not empty, just full of something different. Like air right after a thunderstorm. Charged but clean. I slid down the door and sat on the floor. Legs pulled to my chest, hands resting on my knees. It hit me then, not the guilt, not the doubt she used to plant in me like weeds, but the weight of a lifetime finally sliding off my shoulders. And I didn't want to move. I didn't check my phone. I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat there, in the quiet, in the stillness she never allowed me to have. Because in our house growing up, stillness was dangerous. It meant you weren't doing enough. You weren't proving your worth. If the dishes were done, the floor needed mopping. If I brought home a B+, she'd say, "Why not an A?" If I sat down to breathe, I was lazy. Ungrateful. That word again. She wielded, ungrateful. Like a weapon. Whenever I asked for anything, a school trip, a new pair of sneakers, a day off from cleaning, she'd lean back in her chair, light a cigarette, and say, "You don't know how lucky you are. I could have given you up." I used to believe that. I used to lie awake wondering if I was one bad moment away from her disappearing. So I worked harder. I became useful. The fixer. The good son. The one who didn't ask for much. But the thing about being useful is people forget you're a person. And now, for the first time, I didn't feel useful. I just felt me. Later that night, I finally stood up. Made myself some dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta with too much garlic, and poured a glass of wine I'd been saving. Sat by the window and let the city hum outside. I thought maybe I'd feel empty. Or bitter. But I didn't. I felt clean. Around midnight I got a text from an unknown number. I didn't have her saved anymore. I didn't mean it. I was scared. I don't know how to do this alone. I read it once. Then again. Then I deleted it. Because here's the thing no one tells you about going no contact with someone who raised you. It doesn't feel like slamming a door. It feels like walking through one. Into something else. Something real. My life. And for the first time, I was the one choosing what that looked like. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not from an alarm. Not from noise. I just woke up. And I didn't feel tired. There's this strange clarity that comes the day after a decision like that. Like the heir's dinner. Like your body's still trying to catch up with what your heart finally did. I stood in my kitchen, stirring coffee I didn't have to rush through, and just breathed. And then I remembered the last time I tried to set a boundary with her. I was 19. I had just gotten my first real job, minimum wage, late shifts, but it was mine. I wanted to save for a car. Nothing fancy, just something to get me to work without riding the bus 3 hours round trip. I told her, one morning, carefully, that I couldn't give her rent that month. That I needed to start saving. She looked at me like I'd spit on the floor. Then she told me if I didn't pay, I could find somewhere else to live. I ended up wiring her half my check 2 days later. Rode the bus for another year. I thought about that 19-year-old version of me. Standing in the kitchen, holding a bowl of cereal, just trying to find the right words so she wouldn't explode. I didn't cry for him then. But I did now. Not out of sadness. Out of grief, I think. For all the versions of me that bent. That broke. That begged for scraps of love. After I showered, I got dressed and headed out. I had nowhere in particular to be, but the streets felt different. Like I could take up space for once. I went to a bookstore, one I used to pass but never entered because I didn't have time. I bought a journal. Nothing fancy. Just pages. Blank and waiting. I took myself to breakfast. Ate without checking my phone. No buzzing. No guilt-tripping texts. No emergencies I had to fix. It felt like learning a new language, peace. Later that afternoon, as I walked home, my neighbor, Mrs. Howard, waved from her balcony. Sweet older woman. She'd seen me grow up. "Haven't seen your mom around," she said gently, as I unlocked my door. I paused. "Yeah. She probably won't be around anymore." She blinked. "Oh, well, good for you." That surprised me. She smiled kindly. "I've seen how tired you looked. You don't look tired today." And just like that, I realized people had noticed. Maybe not the details. But the weight. The exhaustion. The constant living with one foot on broken glass. They saw it leave me. I walked inside, closed the door behind me, and looked around my apartment again. Same walls. Same furniture. But it felt different now. Not just a place to recover from her. A place to grow without her. That night, I sat on the balcony with a blanket and that new journal. I didn't write anything profound. Just a line or two. The first page said, "Today was quiet. No one asked me for anything." That felt strange. And good. I stared at it for a while. Then I flipped to a new page and, without thinking, wrote, I used to think love was something you had to earn. That one sat heavier. Because it was true. Every time she needed something, from a ride to an apology I didn't owe, it came with that unspoken price. If you say no, I'll withhold love. If you say yes, maybe I'll show a little. But she never did. She said, I love you. Like it was a receipt. Like it came after I paid for it. And I paid. My entire childhood. I closed the journal and leaned back in the chair, listening to the distant hum of traffic. There was a peace in that nothingness. A stillness I didn't recognize. And maybe that's why it felt so unfamiliar at first, because I'd never been allowed to just exist. I didn't need to perform anymore. I didn't need to rescue anyone. I didn't need to earn anyone's love. I just had to be here. Breathing. And for once, that was enough. The next day, I got a voicemail. I saw her number flash on my screen around noon. I didn't answer. My instinct was still to freeze, just for a second, but I let it ring out and waited for the message. I didn't want to hear her voice. Not live. Not when I wasn't ready. An hour later, I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, heart calm this time. I pressed play. Hi, she began. Her voice was fragile, like she was trying to sound softer but didn't know how. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Long pause. I know I've said things I shouldn't have. I know I wasn't easy. I know I wasn't what you needed me to be. Another pause. I don't know what to do with all this quiet. I keep picking up my phone and forgetting I don't get to call you anymore. She sniffled. I guess I just wanted to hear your voice. But I know I won't. That was it. No grand apology. No promises to change. No admission of the years she'd taken from me. Just the sound of someone beginning to feel the loss of something they never thought they'd lose. I didn't cry. I didn't call her back. I just deleted the voicemail and set the phone down. And then I went outside and bought flowers, not for her. For me. Yellow ones. Bright. Loud. Unapologetic. They sat in a mason jar on my windowsill like proof. Proof that I was still here. Still growing. Even without her. It had been about a week of silence. No calls. No knocks. No voicemails. I thought that was it. That maybe she'd finally accepted it. That this time, the bridge wasn't just burned, it was buried under 1,000 pounds of ash and stone. Then, on a Sunday morning, there was a knock at my door. Not frantic. Not angry. Just a knock. I almost didn't answer. I stood in the hallway for a full minute, just listening. Something in me still flinched at unexpected visits. Like old wiring, sparking where it used to hurt. When I finally opened the door, it wasn't her. It was my cousin Adam. We hadn't spoken much in years. He used to come around when we were kids, usually when things got especially bad at my place and his mom would send over extra groceries or let me crash on their couch. He was one of the few who saw through the performance my mom put on for other people. He looked tired now. Older. But kind. Hey, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. You got a minute? I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't waste time. She called me, he said, sitting down on the edge of my couch. Crying. Said you shut her out? Said you were cruel. I raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. He let out a breath. I didn't believe her. Not really. I just figured I should see for myself how you're doing. I nodded, still quiet. After a moment, he looked around, at the plants, the clean space, the peacefulness. You look better, he said. Lighter. I feel it, I replied. He smiled, but it was sad. She always made you carry more than you should have. We sat in that silence for a while. Then he pulled something from his jacket. An old photo. Faded. Curled at the edges. It was me, probably 7 or 8, asleep on their living room couch. A blanket half on, half off. Adam in the background, laughing at something on TV. I found this the other day, he said. Thought maybe you should have it. I took the photo gently, stared at that kid I barely remembered being. He looked peaceful. Safe. I realized, sitting there, that I'd spent my whole life trying to get back to that version of me. And for the first time, I felt like I was finally getting close. Thanks, I said, meaning it more than he probably knew. He clapped me on the shoulder before he left. You don't owe her anything, man. Just live your life. That's enough. And when the door closed behind him, I looked at that photo one more time. And pinned it to the fridge. Not to remember the past, but to honor the part of me that survived it. That night, I made dinner for one. Not out of loneliness. Out of choice. I used to rush through meals. Eat standing up. Heat something frozen. Text with one hand while stirring with the other, always bracing for her next crisis, next call, next ask. But tonight I cooked slow. Real food. Chopped vegetables with music playing low, something soft and steady. No phone nearby. No voices in my head telling me I should be doing something else. Just the sound of the knife on the cutting board. The simmer of oil in the pan. My own breathing. Halfway through, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked present. Not the version of me who flinched when the phone rang. Not the version who apologized for needing rest. Just a man, in his own home, making dinner for himself, and enjoying it. And that felt like a revolution. A few days later she came back. I didn't expect her. No call. No message. Just the sound of knuckles on wood, sharp and sudden, as I was folding laundry in the living room. I froze, not out of fear, but out of recognition. You can feel it in your chest when someone like that is on the other side of your door. Like the air gets tighter. This time, I didn't open right away. I took a breath. Let the moment stretch. Then I turned the knob and pulled the door open. She looked smaller than I remembered. No makeup. Hair pulled back. That fake composure she always wore like armor? It had cracks now. She held a paper bag in one hand, banana bread maybe, or something she thought would feel like motherly peace offering. Hi, she said. I said nothing. She held the bag out. I made something. I thought maybe we could. No, I said. Calm. Even. She blinked, caught off guard. Just to talk. We already did that. I wasn't in the right headspace then, she said quickly. I was panicked. I said things I didn't mean. You did, I nodded. But that's not the point. Her brow furrowed. Then what is? I leaned against the door frame, looking her straight in the eye. The point is that I meant what I said. She shifted, uneasy now. I needed you to hear the truth, I continued. I needed you to understand how deeply you hurt me, not just in that moment, but for years. And you did. And now, I don't owe you anything beyond that. Her lips parted, like she had a defense ready. But nothing came out. You can't fix this with banana bread, I added quietly. You can't undo decades of control and guilt with one visit. Her eyes began to shine, but the tears didn't move me. Not like they used to. You always knew I'd come running, I said. You counted on it. You built our whole relationship on the idea that I'd never walk away. She shook her head. I didn't mean to. But you did, I interrupted, still calm. And now you have to live with what that cost you. Silence. Heavy. Final. You lost someone who loved you more than you ever deserved, I said. Someone who gave, and never got anything back but shame and silence. She looked at me like she wanted to fight it. But the tears came anyway. Real this time. Soft. Soundless. Like the part of her that finally understood was waking up too late. I don't hate you, I said. Her gaze snapped to mine, startled. I just don't need you anymore. And with that, I stepped back and closed the door. Not with a slam, but with quiet. The next morning, I opened the window. The air smelled like rain had passed through overnight, fresh, like something had been washed clean. I made coffee. Sat at the table in the quiet. She didn't call again. And for once, I didn't wait for her to. There was no dramatic ending, no fireworks. Just stillness. Like a door had closed behind me, and this time, I didn't need to check if it was locked. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was free. And that? That was enough.